Google wants that kind of all-encompassing kind of campaign type, and it's going to keep driving advertisers towards that. It happened last year actually, where you couldn't do brand exclusions or keyword exclusions from your PMAX campaign unless you asked your Google rep directly.
Yeah, it's like a plane can land itself on autopilot, but I damn as hell want a pilot in the front making sure it's doing the right thing.
It's psychological warfare is what it is. Do the Partridge vocal warm-ups in a minute.
Yeah, if you can. We're basically chatting, but you don't know if we started or not.
Yeah. I was just thinking that. Yeah, you're trying to trick me.
It's a weird mind game. But if I sat here and went, "You ready, Vince?" You'd be like, "Yeah." I'd be like, "You sure you're ready?"
It's like when you wrap a treat up, like a medication kind of pill for your dog, up in a bit of ham. Do you know what I mean? It's
they always know.
It's psychological warfare, is what it is.
But they always know it's in there.
Yeah.
Deep down. Yeah. My dog does anyway. I don't know because he's really thick.
There's a look in their eyes. I
don't know how he knows that, but then like doesn't know just useful stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So Vince, we're going to be talking about PPC, your take on PPC, where you think PPC is going. And just generally kind of what you think people should be doing when they're advertising on Google compared to maybe what they think they should be doing. That's the gist of it. So what's your take on where it's at now and what it is and what the actual, you mentioned the word game, like what is it that it's all about now?
I think now, as you said, it's changed a lot, certainly since when I first started. I think when I first started, it was very much kind of manual, granular bidding, almost on a daily basis, looking at the keywords and adjusting, based on the data that's in front of you. And kind of the smart bidding strategies were only just really coming into play. Whereas now, and they weren't very good. They weren't sophisticated at that point. Whereas now they are sophisticated, and it is best practice to use like the machine learning and the smart bidding. I think having a lot of trust, or having more trust in Google is important, and a bit of a mindset change that PPCers have to have in the industry, for sure, but also not giving Google too much leeway because it will ruin your account.
I think this is one of the biggest skills at the moment is understanding what to hand over and what to retain control on. And if you retain too much control, it kind of doesn't work and it doesn't get enough stuff. And if you give too much control away, as we've seen before on other accounts we've looked at, it's just like mayhem. And it's a really fine balance. And it's almost, I think, someone who's really, really great at PPC develops a bit of a sixth sense for that line and where that line sits.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Yeah, it's a balancing act, for sure. And the machine learning is great because, Google has tons and tons and tons of data, but you just need to manage it in the right way. An analogy that I always come back to is the kind of old school toy cars that you get where you drag them back so their wheels kind of are in reverse along a table, you let them go, and the car shoots off. And if you think of that car as the machine learning, and you leave it to its own devices, what often happens is it will fall off the table and it will be, the car will be kind of on its back overturned, or it will eventually just stop. The momentum will stop. And I think having that kind of human element to make sure that the machine learning is managed kind of properly is really important, because you can kind of tap the car to keep it on the table as it's going along, just to carry on with that analogy. And then also once it does come to a stop, you can just go again with a new split test or new keywords or whatever it might be.
I love that. Yeah. It's like a plane can land itself on autopilot, but I damn as hell want a pilot in the front making sure it's doing the right thing.
Yes, and actually, just to carry on with that analogy,
like you wouldn't get on a plane without a pilot, would you? Even though the plane could technically land itself, I'll pay whatever extra it is per seat to make sure there's a human being in the front, just double checking that everything's going to plan.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that's a Ryanair optional extra at some point. Pay £2 extra to make sure human beings on board. But yeah, there's actually another kind of PPC analogy. Just speaking of kind of pilots and planes and things like that. Now that you mention it, is like you can have kind of a more kind of EasyJet commercial airline pilot where you're kind of letting the machine do most of the job, but you're still there to kind of make sure that everything's obviously safe and the account's running well. And also like for things like Black Friday or any industry that's really, really competitive, like a fighter pilot kind of style of PPC, where you can go quite aggressively after, for example, competitor keywords and things like that. So yeah, it's about kind of making sure you're adopting the right approach at the right time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. You got loads of analogies up yours.
Oh yeah, well, for PPC, yes, too many.
I just feel like it's such a completely different thing to like a search campaign of old, and you really have to understand the technology behind it and what it actually is and how it actually works and how the learning process works and how the AI works and how the automated bidding works and how the placements work and how all the signals work and everything. Otherwise, you've got no chance, because the game is all about how you take advantage and manipulate it to get the best performance, isn't it? But you can't do that unless you understand it. But that's a totally different job to setting up an ad group with 10 keywords, setting up another ad group with 10 slightly different keywords, and just completely different, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think I was quite lucky in that I kind of started doing PPC at quite a good time where smart bidding was only just coming into play, because I had that experience of doing kind of the kind of really manual work of the old school stuff. So it kind of helped me understand the principles of kind of the bidding signals a bit better. Whereas I think if you're coming into it now, it's just like, oh, I'll set this bidding strategy because I know it works, but I don't know why.
Granted, don't you? Yeah. Whereas, you're right. When you're manually doing all that work, you're almost trying to manually do what PMax is trying to do now automatically, but you've actually kind of had your hands on it.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's good experience, isn't it? So where do you think PPC, Google Ads, where do you think it's going? Like, what do you think the outlook for next year is like?
I think automation will carry on being king for Google. It's something that they're obviously really pushing. I think PMax and now obviously demand gen, which is relatively new, those two campaign types in particular will continue to evolve. I think Google wants that kind of all-encompassing kind of campaign type, and it's going to keep driving advertisers towards that. I think from kind of a PPCer perspective, it's important to embrace that, but also be wary of it and make sure that we're kind of clued up on what we can control. Always talking to our Google reps about any extra insights we can get, because sometimes it happened last year actually where you couldn't do brand exclusions or keyword exclusions from your PMax campaign unless you asked your Google rep directly. Yeah. And it's like, okay.
That's what it's like when it launched, wasn't it? So you had to ask your rep to exclude brand terms.
Yeah, and I only found that out via a PPC subreddit. So, which is why I think it's so important to obviously keep on top of these trends, because you can miss out on things like that.
Totally.
And ultimately your business or your client or whoever, something like that could be so important and vital to them. So
yeah, do you think that's probably the biggest piece of advice, is just continuously having your ears to the ground?
Yeah, but not just signing up to like 3 newsletters that you never read on a Monday morning. Actually going out there and looking yourself. Yeah, I think is really important. And obviously, if you're working, agency side, or even in house, to be fair, raising that to the right people, whether that's your clients or your stakeholders. Yeah, Google's rolled out this update. This is going to impact X, Y.
Yeah. Have you got any recommendations on where people should go for good sources of regular and up-to-date updates?
So for me, I use kind of the PPC chat hashtag on Twitter or X. I think that's really, really useful, and there's quite a lot of industry leaders who are really vocal on that.
Yeah.
So, just giving them a follow straight away, you'll kind of obviously see that. That's been the main source for me. Reddit, which I've mentioned, and LinkedIn as well. And then there's, other sources like Search Engine Land and things like that, which are really, really good.
Yeah. I think Twitter was always, X brackets, formerly known as close brackets. I think that's always been like such a great source of like instant information. And if you're keeping an eye on following the right people on there, you'll always be within the ballpark on what's happening, won't you?
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't understand something, you can just reply, and it's a friendly community anyway.
Yeah. I just think there's the flip side to that is like there's nothing worse. Like the worst thing you could do, particularly at the moment as all of this is going on and continuing to evolve, is just not bothering to look at stuff like that. And it's so easy to get left behind, isn't it? So easy.
100%. When you're in the day to day and you're working in an account, it is easy to get tunnel visioned and kind of go down various rabbit holes. So I think having that time allocated, even if it's bi-weekly, is key.
Absolutely. Or just come and work with us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be easier.
All right, Vince. Thank you. That was a brilliant debut on the podcast.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, please do come and subscribe. Join us for future episodes where we talk about the ins and outs of running paid media and driving improved conversion and revenue for your business. See you next time.